What a fantastic conversation this one was. So, sitting there listening to Jane Hellman talk, you'd think that she was much older than she actually is. She has so much wisdom and she shares it in such a human way. She covers so much in terms of imposter syndrome, self sabotage, things that she was avoiding, how she started her first sale and what that actually looked like, and how she manages things and the comparison game that we all play at the moment. It's so interesting, this conversation. I could have gone on for much, much longer. If you want a round two, let me know. If you've got any comments, put them below, and then maybe we'll get her back as a recurring guest. All right. I hope you enjoy. Welcome back to Vantage Point Conversations. My name's Colin Parsons. I'm the host. I get to ask questions and be curious about my guests, people that I would probably never have come into contact with in my previous corporate life. And today, my guest is Jane Hellman. Hellman, am I saying it right?
You got it, just like the mayonnaise.
Yeah. Nice. So I don't ever introduce my guests, Jane, other than by name, and oftentimes I get that surname wrong. But could you just take as long as you like, as little time as you like, just to tell the audience a bit about you, highlights, lowlights, any context, anything, take as long or little time as you want, and then we just dive into the conversation from there.
Absolutely. Thank you guys all for joining and watching. Colin, thank you for having me. Obviously, my name is Jane. I'm the owner, founder, inventor of The Warmer. I'm originally from Canada, but I am in Australia at the moment. I invented The Warmer in 2021, so it's been quite a few years, and I've taken it full-time for the past almost 3 years now. So I'm very excited to dive into whatever questions you have. Let's get into it.
Nice. Fantastic. So we'll get into the product in a second, because I don't think we've actually even talked about it before. But one of the things that I, like with all my lives, I have a conversation before having the live, just to make sure my guest is comfortable to actually do a live. But something that stood out for me was that you're doing things on your terms, and I absolutely love that, because I've been fascinated about business for a long, long time. I'm not quite sure why. I think maybe I wanted to be this rich, successful person in just many walks of life. And then when I started thinking about business, I thought it had to be a certain way. Excuse me. And then I started to slowly realize that business doesn't have to be all of this, up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go, 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 go. It doesn't have to be these hard sales. It can be gentle. It can be kind. It can be a balance in your lifestyle. It's how you choose to do it. Whereas for the longest time, it's felt for me that business, excuse me, business needed to be this aggressive growth thing that just, you need to be visible all the time, show your whole life, do everything. But when I spoke to you, I just got this sense of you're almost a bit reluctant to be cool. We had the conversation to call yourself an entrepreneur, and it took you a while to kind of embrace it, but now you have. And on the other side of that, I connect with 20 people every day on LinkedIn, and the amount of people that have entrepreneur in their profile title, and for some reason, everyone thinks they're an entrepreneur now. So I get a bit of an ick when I see entrepreneur. And that doesn't mean that there aren't great entrepreneurs out there. It's just people feel that because they sold lemonade outside their house when they were 5 years old, that made them like an entrepreneur. That, for me, that's not the definition of an entrepreneur. I don't see myself as an entrepreneur. I kind of fell into doing this, and it's sort of formed a business around it. Yeah, I haven't made any money yet. Yeah, I need to think about all of those things, which I'm really enjoying. If you'd have asked me, I don't know, 3 years ago to think about that stuff, and I go, yeah, it's great to have an opinion about someone else's life, but when it comes to my own, I was like, oh. And so, yeah, just take us on the journey, how you kind of fell into it, or not fell into it, how you decided to do it, your journey with or entrepreneurship, and then we can dive in from there.
Absolutely. I guess we'll start at the top, but I'm just laughing in my head thinking you're feeling that exact same imposter syndrome that I had, like refusing to call yourself an entrepreneur even though you're doing your own thing, but that's a story for another day. All right, so let's start from I guess the very very top because you've nailed it. I don't think being an entrepreneur was something that I could see in myself. I wasn't the kid selling lemonade at a lemonade stand. Although I will bring in a funny fact that I was just thinking about the other day. I was like, when parents go back and they say, like, oh, as a kid, you used to do this. Sometimes you kind of have to dig for, like, where was the moment where this seemed like it was viable in my future? But from the very start, it was 2021. I was unemployed, like a lot of people during COVID times, and honestly, very, very lost. I didn't really have a career path in mind. I used to be a flight attendant and I thought like, that's it. This is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. I was looking forward to like my 20 years of service and that all kind of came crashing down. So I had applied for a couple jobs and I had some interviews lined up, but a lot of them were saying, oh, it's a 3-month thing, like take your time. And I was like, all right, let's not get too complacent. And I had this giant stack of books and I loved reading as a kid, but as you get older, you run out of time, you make all these excuses. So I said, I have no excuses. We are stuck in the house. I have no job. I have nowhere to be. I'm doing these home workouts. I might as well read through these books. So I got started, and because I was reading so many, I just wanted to take notes. So I had this like jumbo notebook and a pen, and every day I would just sit on the couch, grab a coffee, wrap up in my giant fuzzy Costco blanket, and I would just sit there and read all day. And no one came after me, which was great. And it was nice and peaceful. And as I was reading, I was taking all these notes, and a lot of the books that people had given me just happened to be on entrepreneurship or business or marketing, or a lot of people gave me finance books because they knew that wasn't my forte. So I was like, all right, let's learn. And probably about halfway through that stack, on a random day, I think it was February 3rd, and I only know because I used to write the date but before each set of notes being like, February 1st, this is what I've learned, February 2nd. And that day rolls around, and just like any other day, I reach forward to grab my pen to take some notes, and the blanket sends my coffee flying. And my carpet was beige, and it was a huge mess. And it sounds really silly to say, but this like vision kind of popped into my head of a warmer. And I was like, oh, that was a weird thought. And I got so distracted by that thought, I actually drew it instead of picking up the spilled coffee. And then I clean everything up, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, all right, that was really weird. I was like, what is it? I'm like looking back at this image as if it didn't even come from my own head. And I was like, all right, I kind of understand the concept of wanting to stay cozy in a blanket, but not wanting to have my movement restricted. And with my interviews being lined up, I knew I'd be working from home. And I was like, imagine the company gives me this brand new laptop and all this equipment, and my silly blanket knocks it off. Because I'm in my own house, I can control the temperature, but Canada is absolutely freezing, and it was February, so I was extra cold. And I was like, all right, I'm sure this exists, and I need one. I was so excited. I was like, I found the perfect thing, and I'm going to go buy one. Amazon Prime. I'm looking it up, and there was absolutely nothing. There was hoodies and comfies and cozies and all these hooded blankets, and I'm thinking, there's no way. I take pride in how I look on Zoom. The last thing I want to do is show up in an avocado hoodie. Like that's another couch item, and I don't need another couch item. And as I sat there, I was like, oh shoot, the thing is happening that all these books are talking about. And they say things like, when you have an idea, it's your responsibility to bring it to life. And that kind of line stuck with me with all these books. I kept reading it and it was repeated, and I'm thinking, it must be true at this point. So I kind of sat there and was like, oh no, it's me. The universe has chosen me to have this idea, and now I have to do something about it. And I wasted no time. I called my mom and I said, hey, do you happen to have that sewing machine from when I was 12? And she's like, yeah, the one you never opened, we got you for Christmas? Yeah, we do. It's in storage. Come grab it. And in that moment, that was kind of one of those moments that I wanted to circle back to, of being like, why did I have a sewing machine? And why was I 12 years old and, losing interest in it? And later in the future, asking my mom, she said, well, when you were even younger, you used to make everybody in the family pillows. You got this like starter sewing machine, and you used to sit there and you would just sew squares, which is hilarious because that is still the extent of my creativity when it comes to sewing. And I used to stuff them with stuffing from the craft store, and I'd pick out the ugliest prints. Like one of them that I'll never forget was this big lion's head. And I think my grandparents probably still have it in their home to this day because it was just sentimental. So I don't know. I guess you could kind of have seen it coming at that point. But yeah, didn't really realize till later on.
I think you've said so much in there that I think is amazing. I think this the whole idea of being unemployed as well. Oftentimes, so I started doing these lives as being made unemployed. The fact was that I'd often wanted to start my own business. I tried, everyone sort of sells the dream of like side hustle, but I could never balance what that was. I tried to get a few things off the ground. Just, I'm not quite sure why it didn't. I think something internally just didn't feel aligned. It felt great and I found some motivation, but I just couldn't get it off the ground. But I feel that being made unemployed it really sort of gives you that either reason or permission to do it, to go after it. Because oftentimes when we have all this security and everything, you go, yeah, I'll do it one day. And so I don't know if I'm a natural born overthinker or that just came out through my childhood, but I was always like, yeah, that's great. And I'd live in like this fantasy land of, yeah, wouldn't it be nice if this and this and this and this? You go, yeah, great. But the reality is to quit your job and to go all in. And again, throughout this conversation, there's always going to be different schools of thoughts. Some people say, look, go in, plan A, don't have a plan B. Then other people will tell you, yeah, just do it as a plan B and see if it works and keep your security and stuff. But I think most of it has to align with who you are and how you are. And this is what I really like, because I've started to have quite a few conversations with people and about business. And I always thought it was like, oh, okay, you've got to be like aggressive and stuff like that, and you've got to sell this way. So I read a book called Influence. I don't know if you've ever read it, and I think it's Robert Cialdini or something like that. And it can be used in the wrong way, like how to manipulate people, like scarcity and stuff like that. And I've never liked that, like, of a way to sort of entice people in. I don't find myself thinking in that way. Yeah, if someone is interested in something that I'm offering, I don't want to say, look, this is the last minute now before this offer goes away. And I've always found it as a trickery way. I spoke to someone the other day who actually I did a live with, and she said, yeah, I don't do that. I just say, yeah, I'm always here. Go away, think about it. If it's right for you now or right for you in 6 months, come back. And I was like, oh, okay. It doesn't have to be this certain way of doing things.
Yeah.
But in your world, having that quietness, that space to go back to, like you mentioned quite a few things about your childhood, like you used to like to read, but we get busy in our jobs and in life that we disconnect from all of those things. You said, you like sewing. Yes, there was a vision maybe for doing something with a sewing machine, yet you never unpacked it. But I don't know why life takes us on this journey, and then having a pause or a break or something just to reconnect with actually who we are is such a profound moment. Yet we have to wait for events like being made redundant to force us into that. We don't often choose, or we just go, oh, I've got to keep moving forward, otherwise everything's going to collapse.
It's actually like, a lot of times when people are unhealthy, it takes like a really serious illness for them to like kick into gear. It's very similar to that, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I've had conversations about burnout before. And so something I never really, I've always thought that my brain ran the show. I always thought, okay, I have a logical brain. I wouldn't say I'm hugely clever in any way. We think clever as in genius, etc. But I just thought I was kind of average. But I thought everything was run by my brain. And then there was a guy who I worked with, he went through a burnout, and he explained that actually he'd run his whole life through his brain. He just kept going faster. He wouldn't sleep as much. He just kept going. And that worked for him for his whole life, for him, his school. I think he played football. Was going all the time. And then just before his burnout, he was sort of getting signals, and he was like, and then his burnout basically was his body's version of saying, nope, we're not doing any anymore. I've sent you a load of signals. I've warned you. Now enough.
Yeah.
And this disparity between his brain and his body was the actual thing that was happening. And his body's no. And so even in his recovery, his brain was trying to sort of start the engine and keep going, but his body's going, nope. And he would get ultimately really tired. But we often think about burnout, and I know it's horrible and etc. And there's a bigger story behind all of that. But ultimately, it does give you that reflective period. And this guy was really kind in sharing so much about his story because I didn't know anything about burnout. But he's changed direction. He's changed the way that he thinks about things. Like he was a people pleaser, and he was like, "No, I've got to slow that down." And he had to do it not just because he wanted to, but physically his body wouldn't allow him to do it. And so it knew the signals. If he tried to go 5 miles an hour quicker than his body allowed, his body was going no, no, and he would go back. And so it was this regulation, his body's regulation of doing things. And I feel that our bodies hold so much wisdom, yet we often neglect it. We don't listen to it. And I've had conversations about intuition before, and I believe that we all have intuition. Some people are much more connected with it. They kind of, and now I've got 2 young kids. I think that intuition in young kids is amazing. It's there. They know, they feel their body, they feel environments, they feel when something's not quite safe, or a whole load of things. Yet throughout life, school, parenting, whatever, kind of gets not physically beaten out, obviously occasionally, not in a good way, but like we kind of are told to switch that off.
Yeah.
So
One of my favorite quotes is, "Who were you before the world told you who you should be?" And it's exactly that. It's like, it's hard to remember as a kid, but I agree. Kids have that natural instinct and intuition that slowly changes over time as opinions start creeping in.
yeah, and it's really sad. And as a parent, I kind of see both sides because I want my kids to be as I want them to be in the moment. Yeah, I'm very conscious to sort of say, no, I want them to be themselves. And I would like them to be themselves for as long as they can and feel that, because I think the longer I can allow them to do that, the better it will be for their decisions later on in life. But there are moments where I go, no, don't be loud and crazy, like be quiet because we're in
Yeah.
a restaurant or something. So, but for you, like, do you when you look back now, do you make the connection with all those things? Is it only hindsight now you look back and go, oh, okay? Do you think you had that from a young age? Do you think there were signs? How is it for you?
I was thinking about that today of those signs and whether or not I could have possibly anticipated this. But I think what it comes down to, I wasn't maybe that like natural born entrepreneur, but I was always willing to try things. And I, looking back, had all these stints of little things that I had tried and not necessarily given up on, but been like, oh, that was fun. Maybe another time in the future, not for me, not for me. And just kind of like dwindled down my options. I did that in sports growing up. I tried all the sports, decided which ones were my favorite, pursued those as long as I felt like it, and then went, I'm good. And we recently dug up some old family videos, and I was an age where I cannot remember this at all, but I'm standing up on stage, this tiny, tiny little kid, playing a kind of complicated song on the violin. And zero memory of this. My dad is beside me playing the guitar, and it's super cute. And I'm like, Dad, why did I quit the violin? And he's like, I don't know. You were amazing. Like, we all thought you were going to be this star. And then you went, meh, not for me. And he looked at me and probably said, all right, then what's next? And I said, the accordion. He said, are you sure? Are you sure? The violin's a little bit. And I was like, nope. I put my foot down. And I got this tiny mini accordion. It was so cute, little red thing. And I just learned. I took lessons and I upgraded and got to high school, went, not for me. And again, that was probably a little bit of the world getting in my ear saying, why do you want to play the accordion? What a lame instrument. That's for old grandpas. And I said, fine, drum kit. Let's learn the drums. And I was never surprising anybody. I think they got used to it in my family of, all right, Jane, what's next? What are you doing this week? So tons of those moments. And I think in business and in life, the people that are successful are just willing to try, even if it's embarrassing, it's scary, if you're bad at it, because we are all bad when we do things for the very first time. And if you can just lean into being absolutely awful, knowing that you're never going to be worse than the very first day, like you're always going to be better, even just by like a microscopic amount the next time. I'm really huge when I tell my friends advice about filming videos because they're like, Jane, you film all these videos. Can you imagine that first video I ever filmed was awful? Stuttering, awkward, nervous. But that eventually fixes itself if you just don't stop.
Yeah, it's there's so much wisdom in that because we have this ability to compare to other people, and do you know the Diary of the CEO, Stephen
Yes.
Bartlett? Yeah. So like, I don't actually look at him that way and want to be what he's got, but you go, oh yeah, like his videos are great, and his podcast, the way it's all structured, okay, great. Which, to be honest, I disagree in terms of how I do my format, and mine's on a shoestring budget. It's not quite the same, but we look at the wrong sort of people, and we also compare too much. And people sort of say, I mean, I've been on some courses before, and they said, go and find the people you kind of want to emulate. But in that, I feel that you also lose yourself, and you try to be someone else. And the most progress that I've ever made in doing this, you know, the it surprised me how, when I made the decision to do these lives, how the universe opened up and just allowed people to say yes to conversations, people I'd never met before. And I was like, why are they saying yes? Like, why? I'm no one. Like, why are people saying yes? And I thought, oh, it'll be like one or two people, and then it'll all dry up. No, it kept on coming, kept on coming, kept on coming. And I was like, what the hell's going on here? But it's strange when you say about like your childhood, because one of the things that stopped me for the longest time was when I was a kid. I remember recording my voice on a tape recorder and playing it back. So I must have been 4 or 5, and I had such a squeaky voice. And I was like, oh, I don't like that. And whenever I had to record my voice on like a voicemail for work and stuff, I'd have to record it about 30 times. I didn't like saying, hey, this is Colin Parsons. There was the way that I said it just felt so icky to me.
Yeah.
And even in one of my corporate jobs, I was held back from a bonus and a pay rise because of the way that I spoke. And they said it was monotone. There was no, it was just not very engaging. And I was like, so for the longest time, I was quite insecure about the way that I either looked. As a kid, I was a bit chubbier, had spots, dandruff, a whole load of things. But for some reason, I got over that. And now I'm okay to see myself on camera. I'm really okay. I don't think I'm the most attractive, but I don't think I'm the most horriblest. All those insecurities I've dealt with for so long, it's like this is almost like child's play. And I lean into the fact about talking. But I think early messages, the messages you kind of had was okay, like they were kind of reinforcing. But often for other people, it's actually you're told the other thing, and there's like this misalignment. You kind of go, well, I like doing that, but the universe or the world or parents, teachers, whoever have told you, no, that's not right, or the way that you've done it. And we forget that we change along the way, and whoever that version was that we saw doesn't need to be the same person, or that incident doesn't mean that we can't do it. And
Yeah.
so, but again, I never thought this was going to be as successful as it is. I just leaned into it because other options had gone away. It was a started out frustration, and I found that I really enjoyed it. And that enjoyment side of things really is something that pushes you through. Because I think in business, people say you can start like a side hustle and just do this and this and this. But the reality is you need to love what you do,
You do.
because, you know, motivation runs out. You know, there are days when you just go, oh no, and you need to kind of fall in love with it and find the thing that balances out the things that you don't like are, okay, well, they're just a necessary part that I need to do, but I get to do this. And at some stage, if you're successful enough, that stuff maybe you can outsource to someone else. But I've said a lot of words, but ultimately, you know, it's just about leaning in and trying. And, you know, people look at my content. I don't see that I'm this miraculous person. I just see that I'm just done the next video. I've done the next video. But when I started, I didn't know the software. I changed my lighting. I changed loads of things. I didn't use this microphone. I used my headphones, a load of different things. But in that comparison side, we often look at the wrong people to be compared. You just want to look at the people close around you, but also not lose yourself. And I think that's often what tries to happen. You go, oh, I like this style, and then you try to emulate it, but we need to be as authentic as we can. So anything in there that resonates, doesn't shoot me down
Yeah.
if you.
When you're talking, I think I've kind of discovered my superpower, and although I've had, trust me, my fair share of negativity around me, like there has been noise from all angles of things I could and could not do, but my superpower in all of this was that my family is like unwavering in their support of me trying new things. I know not everybody has that. I've heard of parents being like, "Oh no, like don't do that. It's scary out there." And it kind of segues into a story of why I did go into corporate, because I was scared of obviously starting a business, not knowing where to start, kind of like you. But then when I experienced that burnout that you mentioned at the beginning, my dad was actually the one to pull me out of it. He said, "You're quitting. March 1st, you're done." And I just sat there being like, I don't know if it's okay for a parent to like say that. I've always heard the opposite, like don't quit your job, it's safe, it's, invest in your stocks. And I was kind of hearing the opposite, and it was really confusing because I looked at him and I was like, what parent tells their daughter who finally landed their new dream of having this, corporate job, climbing the corporate ladder, and then tells them give it all up for this scary thing that there's no guarantee if it'll work, you might not take income from it for all these years. And just having that kind of support behind me, I was so incredibly lucky to like, not even as a safety net. It's not like they were going to save me, but they were just there to support me and say, you can do it, and point out the burnout. Say, I know you can't see it, and I know you think you can push, but if you keep pushing, Jane, you're really going to lose it. So now's the time. Take the step, take the leap. We'll be here if you need us. But yeah, it was just very, very lucky to be able to do that. And like you, not accepting the fact that I could be an entrepreneur if I actually put my energy there. I was very reluctant. So I tried and look where we went.
What was the reluctance for you?
So going back to like even just inventing this product, once I got my sewing machine and set it up and made the first prototype, I did not want to tell a soul. And it's the kind of thing that you should want to scream from the rooftops, like, I invented this thing, I'm so excited. But I felt this like inner like shame of not thinking I deserved to be called an entrepreneur or like giving myself that title. I had all these ideas of like, when you hit X number of sales, then you become a business owner, then you become an entrepreneur. And every time I would hit one of these little goals, I still wouldn't allow myself to have it. Like I was like, you need to make $1 before you call yourself a business owner. And then I would sell one and be like, $2. It just, the goalpost kept pushing, and I was so hesitant. And people that I knew were, hey, how's your week? What are you up to? And I wouldn't tell them. I started a secret Instagram for my business because I felt like I needed to get it out, but I didn't want anyone I knew to judge me for it. And just like the algorithm does, it showed it to all my family and friends all at once. And I used to post, I mean, I still do, daily stories of talking about product development and what I was doing and what I was learning, honestly, to nobody. And once everyone saw it and started approaching me, I would divert, and I was so easy to talk to the internet, to this blank space, but it was so hard to let people in my life into it. And it took me so long, years and years and years, to like really embrace it. But looking back, I wish I didn't hold myself captive to that, because I don't know. I think I would have been so much happier to set myself free. I put myself in that cage, and there was no need. It should have been my title the minute I invented something and brought it to
Yeah.
life.
What was the trigger to switch you the other way?
I think I just realized one day that I should be proud of what I've done, and that other people are proud of me, and not that it takes external validation, but I it's quite embarrassing when someone gives you a compliment and you're hard to receive it. Like, I feel awkward when someone does that to me, like, oh, no. And you're like, why don't you just say thank you so much? I'm proud of that too. I'm excited for myself, because those are the feelings I had on the inside. They were just bottled in there and hard to share, but I was excited for myself. I was like, I just invented a whole new category of products, and yet I didn't want to share it. So I'm glad I've gotten over that.
I it makes so much sense to me. So I've created a business. So there is a business title, there is a bank account which kind of reflects things, but I have never made a penny on this. I've made some money, what was it? I was grading some university thesis that was done in English here. And so I've never made a penny from these lives. And so I didn't think I could legitimately call myself a business. But I interviewed this guy who's now become one of my mentors, Pedro. So I don't know if he's watching this, but he asked me. We started talking about how I do this, and I said, well, yeah, I reach out to 20 people every day. Then I have conversations, maybe online. There's no agenda. If people want to come and have a live, great. If they don't, great. I've made a connection. If they just want to ignore me, also great. And I don't know where that being okay with rejection came from. I just kind of went okay, and then I would have conversations with people just like I did with you, and then if they were happy, we would do a live, and then I would stream it to the platforms. And he said to me, "Do you know that they pay agencies for just the searching for guests?" And I started out I said to myself I would do 2 a week, and now it's become 3 a week. And to be honest, I reckon I could do 4, if not 5 a week. People have started to mention me to other people and go, "Oh, you should have this person." People are now clicking on my link to kind of just have conversations, which I think is amazing.
Good.
But I didn't realize, and oftentimes it takes other people to reflect to you that you've actually created a business. He said something. He said just that upfront work of connecting with people and finding guests. He said that's an agency job, which is probably $8,000 to $10,000 a month. That's what they charge. And I was like, what? And I was like, okay, I'm doing all the marketing, I'm doing all the lives, doing all the streaming. And I was like, but it took that external person to kind of reflect that to me, because I was little old me just doing this, and I was like, oh, and I still haven't made a penny out of it, like I said. So I felt for the longest time I couldn't call it a business, because businesses obviously need to make money. But then I don't know if someone told me or it just came up with an idea. Most of these startups, they never make money for a long time. They take this massive loan or VC funding or something like that, and you go, well, I haven't done that. I'm self-funded for sure. I was like, oh yeah, businesses don't start making money day one. Yeah, in my head I had this, I don't know, basic thought process of it, and it's like, oh, okay. But when you allow yourself to say it, it's quite a proud moment, right? It's quite like, yeah, this is really good. And to your comment about the compliments, yeah, it's I've always been someone that deflects compliments. I go, oh yeah, no, but I had this help from this person or whatever. And then someone said to me, do you know it's actually rude to reject compliments?
It
And I
is.
never thought about it that way, because you're basically, someone gives you a compliment and you say, oh, no, no, no. And you're basically denying their thought or feeling about something. And
Yeah.
ever since they've told me that, I was like, oh, okay. And so I tricked my brain to go, okay, just let it land. And now I just say thanks. And the warmth and glow that spreads through my body when you go, oh, thanks. I don't overthink it. Don't think I've got to deflect. And I don't even, before I used to associate like feeling like I was showing off or bragging or boasting about something. And again, I think that's maybe some negative bias in my life, through my parents, or we've seen situations said, oh look, they're showing off, etc. But I realized being good with who you are and how you are is the best, and just, it doesn't need to be showing off. Just go, yeah, that's great. But it does take that switch, right? And it needs, for me, you don't do it just once and then it's done. You have to keep doing it and keep telling yourself, okay, when I get these, just sit there and say thanks and
Yeah.
don't do
Behavior
anything
change
else.
is a tough thing to make changes to. And it's not always conscious because our behavior has been the same for so many years that you can't just wake up one day and be like, oh, I'll be different forever. Like you might take a few compliments, start deflecting, take a few more, but the giver is always, like they're doing it because giving feels good. And they might have been putting themselves out there. Like it might be really hard for them, or they're practicing giving compliments. And then to be shut down just because someone like doesn't believe that about themselves is such a silly concept, because you're right, they're not saying like, Colin, this is who you are. They're just like, it's just an observation, or you know a pat on the back. And for us to be like, no, no, that's not for me, is, you don't get to choose what someone compliments you about. Maybe deflect if they're being rude, but a compliment is like only a positive thing,
Yeah.
and we turn it
And there's,
around for no reason.
yeah, and very quickly we dismiss it, and it's, yeah. And I, ever since I started to do it, it's I realize, oh, okay. And then I start to build up this sort of confidence in myself and go, okay, and then, because before, when I deflected compliments, you kind of ignore what people are seeing about you, and you just kind of go, oh, well, I'm not that. But actually, if you let them in, you start to, it's almost like you've got this wall and the compliment comes in and you fire out them. But if they come in, you start to go, oh, that's how people see me. That's really nice.
Yeah.
And then again, I get confidence in doing things. And then you go, okay. And that confidence, again, where, like you said, we don't wake up one day and go, oh yeah, I went to bed and I was unconfident. I woke up and I was like Superman. I was just like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely rocking it. It doesn't work that way. It's just a series of very small things. And I think, you know, confidence can be knocked down very quickly. But if you build this very strong foundation, that is so important. And, because life is going to throw you curveballs, things are going to happen. But if you've got this foundation that is rock solid, however high you climb up that confidence ladder, you can only be knocked down to a certain level. But often in my life, I try to be confident. I try to fake confidence. And what would happen is I'd get knocked down so far that it just knocked me below this foundation. And it took me forever even just to get back up here. And so over a period of time, I just realized that I just need that foundation and just be okay with myself and remind myself on a daily basis. And again, it comes from these compliments and other things. And it's not always external validation. It's, you need to see yourself and your value yourself. And that's super important, because if you're looking for external validation on all the time, that just doesn't work. But it can be just one of those sources that you allow in for people to give you a compliment.
It actually comes back to that whole like comparison thing, where when we're starting something new and we look out into the sea of people doing the thing that we are aspiring to do or think in our head, and it seems so out of reach. And you've said it a few times where you're like, I'm just doing like the next thing. And I have a lot of friends who, see what I'm doing and say, hey, like, how'd you start it? You seem like so far ahead of me. And I'm like, do not look over here, because all you really need to look at is the very next thing. I always tell them, what do I always say? I say first things first and next thing next. Like, do your very first tiny little micro action. You'll gain the confidence thinking, wow, I could do it. It wasn't that hard. Because the first tiny little step should not be hard. My first step of, I thought to myself in this moment, what do I need to? I've had this idea. What's next? What's the very first step? Pick out a piece of fabric. If I would have been like, turn this and scale this into a 7-figure, 9-figure business and get on all these retailers, that would have been so overwhelming. And it would have seemed so impossible, because that is not the next step. The next step was go get a fabric swatch. Go to the store, literally get in your car and drive there, talk to the nice older ladies at the fabric store, the local one in town, and just decide like what would be soft on my arms. And I kept it so small that I would have been silly not to try that very first step. It was
yeah, sorry, go on.
easy.
Okay. Because this is I've always lived in fantasy land. As a kid, I just had all these like, oh, I don't want to share all of those because they're a little bit embarrassing, but there's this sort of narrative that you have to think big, like moonshots and everything like that. And I think somewhere along the line I became an overthinker, and so I would set these audacious goals, and I used to do it pretty much because if it worked out, amazing, but if it didn't, then okay, it was never going to work out anyway. And almost I think as a self-sabotage that actually it wouldn't work out, and if it did, I wouldn't know what to do with myself if it did. And but there's a lot of people talk about goal setting and doing all of this, and I've really struggled with goal setting because people say, "Oh, set these goals." So it used to be a massive thing in the corporate world. You've got to set your objectives and like your goals for whatever. Oftentimes they're all misaligned, etc. And so even in my personal life, I've done it. Like I've watched videos on setting goals and visions. And what happens is I end up going, well, I don't really know what's right for me. So then I just go, okay, yeah, I'm going to set this goal of earning like £10,000 a month. And then I go, oh, no, that doesn't feel right. I'm going to set like 100,000. No. At one point, I convinced myself that I need to make £1 million a month. Now, my lifestyle is nowhere near any of that.
Yeah.
But I just created this up and up and up. And it got so big that I never did anything. It became so overwhelming. And now that I've done this in these lives, I started from here. I just started and go, I don't really know. So I started through frustration. I was going for a walk with my girlfriend, and I just I was frustrated. The job that I was trying to do, be a consultant, wasn't taking off. And I just went, oh, fuck it. I'm just going to go and do 2 LinkedIn Lives a week for a year. Something very raw underneath me went, and I was just sort of saying the words and just sort of out frustration, but something went, yeah, that's right. And I was like, okay. And then from then on, I just went, okay, well, what do I need to do to get there? What's the next step, like you? And that has helped me along the way so much, because I don't end up going here. And now, and in my life, I had all these plans and ideas, etc. But things come up in your life where they get turned around. So I used to think, oh, when I have this, then I will be like this. Now I don't think. I generally think around 2 weeks in advance, maybe a month. That's it. Yeah. And if I have to plan a holiday in 3 months' time, that blows my mind. Yeah. But so I understand you kind of need to go between the two, but I'm very happy here because the overwhelm doesn't creep in. I just go, okay, I'm just going to do that. I'm going to have that conversation and it's going to be enjoyable. And if it works out great, then I'll do the next one. How was it for you? Do you have a vision for yourself, for the company or anything? Or are you still going this way? I'd be interested to see if there was a switch between any of that.
It's changed a lot over time. I think it was really good to kind of have this like held loosely vision of what I wanted the future to look like. I also wanted to at least know in my head that Warmer could belong somewhere. I was like, where can I envision it eventually? If this became a business, if this became like a manufactured product, because I'm talking like day one, I used to give myself maybe like 5-10 minutes to just like let my imagination go crazy, write down everything that came to mind. And obviously I went straight to the big guys. I was like, I want to be in Staples, I want to be in IKEA, I want to, I want to be everywhere. And funny enough, some of those things have come true, which is crazy. Like we just launched into Staples a couple weeks ago, which blew my mind. But I didn't rush to doing that. I didn't think about this product and go and apply at Staples to be a vendor. It wasn't like I didn't think that way because I knew that wasn't going to be realistic. But I gave myself this chance to dream big. And then I was like, no, we need to go back so tiny. Like, you are nothing. You don't have a name. You have no business. You have nothing right now. So let's start way, way smaller. And I've always just held that thought loosely in the back of my head as like this little voice reminding me of which direction I want to go in. And as the years went on, like, I didn't hold myself to anything. I started, and luckily, somehow, I think it was like the universe giving me a sign. The job that I ended up getting during that time was at Shopify. And it wasn't like I applied to Shopify after thinking of this idea. Like, it was all in the same time zone. Time frame. See, now I'm thinking about time zones again with all this daylight savings. And when I started working there, I was like, this is perfect. Like, now I'm in the e-commerce world completely by accident. This wasn't my intention. And I started learning about things. And instead of going this retail route that I thought of at the very beginning, I thought, no, let's build a brand. Let's make sure this product to market fit. Let's build my own store. Let's do some D2C. And that kind of changed my mind. I was like, let's just try to sell some of these and see if people want them. And as soon as I posted, I think it was like my 4th TikTok ever. I had 3 followers at the time, just having fun. And it took off, went viral, and a retailer in New York reached out. And at this point, you can imagine how unprepared I am for this sort of thing to happen. And again, my direction switched. I was like, you want to stock my product? Absolutely. I can make that happen. Say yes and figure it out later. And then after I got all that sorted, I know I'm skipping a lot in between of the story, but after I got that sorted, I was like, wait a second, what happened to my D2C? I completely left it in the dust for this other side quest, and I came back to it. And it's kind of been that like repeating cycle of following the direction that the world is taking me in. When things come in, I'm like, you know what, I should be doing that. Trying that out, coming back to what I thought my direction was. But it's all led me to my original direction of getting into retailers and selling it online. It's like, I don't know, it all kind of worked out.
I think, again, you say so much stuff that I think is so intelligent and has so much wisdom behind it. Because I think in the beginning, everyone tells you need a website, a logo, etc., etc. And I know it depends on, whether you've got a physical product, etc. But a lot of people, especially in like the service based, I'm thinking of consultants, etc., they all go, okay, I need a website, I need a fancy logo. And you don't. Like, it's just an excuse, it's a thing, it's a barrier to sort of say, well, I need that before I'm legitimate or whatever. But the fact that you're quite open and relaxed in terms of, you're not rigid, you're not stuck to one way of doing it, yet you seem to be able to take that pause and reflect on how things are going and going, okay, like, yeah, this opportunity is coming, okay, I'm going to follow that. But then you will come back to something original. It seems to be that lovely balance in terms of, okay, yeah, I'm not married to this idea, I'm going to see if it works, and then there'll be a moment of reflection and come back and see if there's a different way. I think that's such a brilliant way of doing business, because you kind of investigating and kind of seeing what fits and kind of assessing. Have you always been that way? Have you just looked for data or signals? Is that something you've always had, or is it just in the business world for you?
Yeah, like I said, I'm just not afraid to try. And I know that all of these opportunities that were coming my way were things that I was completely uncomfortable with. Down to the first sale I ever had was just me showing a friend this prototype. And when I tell you it was ugly, it was so ugly. But it worked. It was just functional. And I'll never forget sliding it on the chair and being like, and this is how it works. And his brother turned to me and said, I'll take 10. And I was like, they don't exist. There's no name, there's no price. This is the only one in the world that exists. But I was like, I feel like following those next steps, like him saying, I'll buy 10, forced me to figure out how to get them made. Because I knew the limits of my skills and I thought there's no way I'm sewing another one of these. This took me forever on my living room floor and many stitches that were stuck and redone. I was like, I couldn't sell something that I handmade. And it forced me into that next step where I called that day a local seamstress. And I'm trying to explain this product to her over the phone. And she's like, honey, no idea what you're saying. Could you come in? And so I walk in this shop with this terribly sewn blanket. And she's like, I need to investigate this. Could you leave it here for a week? And I'm like, okay, that's my next step. Leave this here for a week. She goes, I'm going to need some more fabric. Could you maybe get this type and this type? And so I'm learning things as I go. And I'm like, oh, I would have never thought of that. I'll be back in half an hour. Sprint to the fabric store, come back. She's like, all right, leave it with me. And I left there being like, I would have never thought to get another one made. I was going to, I'm not even kidding you, slide it on my own chair and use it while I worked and not tell a soul. That was my original plan. But putting myself out there and getting that feedback gave me direction. So I feel like I've always trusted that sort of thing to happen. And just like the TikTok going viral and a retailer reaching out, it forced me to do real manufacturing. Because imagine the surprise when I call this lovely local seamstress and I'm like, hey, we need 125. She's like, I do dress alterations. Like, what does this look like to you? But then I was like, oh shoot, what's the next step? You know, like I can't make them, she can't make them. What's next? And that's when I obviously called around to manufacturers, and it opened up my world completely, because you're not normally going to just be researching those things before their time. And so kind of following those breadcrumbs has led me to the cake, I guess.
I, as you were talking, there's something that comes up. I have this self-sabotage thing, and I was like, so when you were like that first sound, the guy said, "Oh, yeah, I'll take 10." Something in me would have gone, "Oh, no, 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 I couldn't do that." And I was like, well, like I was wondering if, and I want to say the word bravery, and I don't know if it's bravery or just that inner confidence, inner knowing, or just, oh, I'll figure it out. But and I've had this conversation with a number of people. They kind of talk themselves out of sales.
Well, let me be super clear, because I'm missing a part here. I looked at him and I said, oh, sorry, no, these aren't for sale. I'll be very clear. I definitely wasn't like, yeah, I can do that. Give me an hour. I said, thank you so much. I'm pretty sure I sprinted out of that house. There was no immediate confidence in myself. But as I left, and I recently dug out the screenshot because I was like, what did happen? You know, it gets all fuzzy 5 years later. And I had a text that said, hey, it's me. I was serious when I was asking for 10. There's no pressure. Take your time. When you have 10, I would love to buy them. And it gave me some time to sit on it and think, because trust me, I was freaking out on the inside. I'm like, why does he want 10? How am I going to get 10? Is anyone going to enjoy these? He wanted them for the ladies in his office. He owned an insurance firm. And he's like, the ladies in my office are freezing. Imagine I got this for them as a gift. And I'm like, oh my goodness, he's about to give these away to 10 professional strangers in my small town. What if it gets back that it's from me and they don't like it? So just to clarify, I was very scared, but I always come back to at least trying and giving it my best shot and saying, all right, if I did make this happen, how would I do it? What's next?
That's thank you for sharing that, because a lot of people don't share that extra part. You know, we live in this world where there's this narrative of being on the front cover of magazines, and yeah, I've got it all figured out. But the reality is, and I think this is the part that I truly believe there are so many people out there that have the ability to start their own business. I think there's also a narrative of everyone sort of saying, yeah, you should start your own business and etc. I feel that that's quite a dangerous place to be, because I think starting your own business, being good at something and starting your own business are two separate things. Um, just because you're good at, you know, the thing that you do doesn't mean that you have the skill set to run a business. They are very different disciplines in many ways. And yes, some people can do both, and that's great. But you know, there is a lot of advice of just start your own business and everything's going to take off from there. But in there, you share these sort of insecurities, these unknowns, everything, and we don't talk about that enough because, and that I love that side of it because that's real. That's the actual thing that happened. It's just like, okay, yeah, and you know, you had a number of signals along the way. You know, you got a follow up text message, etc., and it's like, oh, okay, and you had, you know, we always think a decision needs to be made on the spot, but you had a bit of breathing time. So, you know, a number of things worked in your favor, but that was matched with who you are because, like you said, if 10 professionals are going to get this, you know, how are they going to see it, feel it, and you were kind of standing behind it. And I think, you know, that whole thing as well, we don't know, you know, like you followed the breadcrumbs, and where I think a lot of people get stuck in paralysis, including myself, is that you kind of need to work out all of those things. But and I'm one of these people that wants to do everything on my own. I'm not, although I love having conversations with people, I'm not really a people person. I'm quite introverted in many ways. I can be extroverted when needed, which often gives people the impression that I'm this outgoing person. Most of the time, 90% of the time, I'm just like
Yeah.
this quite reserved person that just likes my own inner world. And so when it comes to thinking, oh, I've got to be switched on, I've got to be an extrovert all the time, that's quite scary for me. It's like, oh, that doesn't feel safe, or there's stuff that comes up for me. But it doesn't need to be that way. And it's just like you say, following the breadcrumbs, just leaning into it. And there's like I said, I went for a walk the other day thinking about how can I turn this into a business. And there was this amazing feeling in me. I was like, what an amazing problem to have. Like if you'd asked me 5 years ago, that would have absolutely crippled me.
Yeah.
I would go, no, 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 it's too much. But now I go, there's different ways. And then I start to understand, okay, what am I avoiding? And that's the question I'm popping up more and more now, because oftentimes the thing that I should be doing, and I'm hesitant to say the word should because there's not always a should, but you know that you need to do something. There's some action that you need to take and you're not doing it. And what's the thing why am I avoiding that? Is that
Yeah.
being visible? Do I, um, do I feel unsafe? Am I worried about something? What is that? Most of the times, if I dig into that a little bit, the task in itself is super easy. It's some feeling or emotion or something that's holding me back. And
Yeah.
so I'm quite visual, and I didn't realize this. So I've said to you before, I think I do like mind maps. So when we have a conversation, I just write little words and stuff like that. And I've struggled with like to-do lists because I go, oh, I love a to-do list, get it down on paper. If that goes over like 10 items, like my everything becomes foggy and I can't find which is the priority. So I've come up with this system of using like a mind map of in a moment when I can feel everything is overwhelming. I've got stuff to do with the kids, I've got stuff to do with the apartment, I've got stuff to do with um, the business, I've got to do this and this. I can feel this huge overwhelm. And I just do this mind map of like these different areas. Okay, what's going on with the kids? And I can zoom out and have this much easier thing, because oftentimes there's one thing that will knock down a load of other things. And you go, well, if I do that, and oftentimes it's the little thing that's been burning a hole in my brain, but I don't see it logically in my brain. But when I see it on paper, I go, do that. And then everything else kind of just, it's like a house of cards. It goes, everything's either going to take care of itself or it becomes non-important. But the way that I see it, everything is important in that moment, and my brain's just spinning and spinning. But that thing that I'm avoiding, it's often something in my past, something that I go, oh no. And I think if to be successful in business, you can't avoid those things. You have to face them, and that can be quite scary. It's like I want to. People always say, "Oh, it's like if you're afraid of spiders, hold a spider in your hand." That, like,
Little
but I
exposure
don't.
therapy.
Yeah, but that can also be absolutely crippling, right? You just go, "Hang on, I'm just going to faint or whatever if I'm going to hold this spider."
Uh-huh.
But if you go down to like the smallest step and just go, and most of the times it's really not as scary. There's a lot of stories that my mind's telling me, and you just go, oh, okay. And normally there's someone there very close to you that you can ask. And we think that we can't ask people for help, advice, and stuff. But so many people are willing to help. They just, yeah, and it doesn't cost money. It's just, yeah, they're for free, even if it's a small charge. Like you say, oh, okay, I'm just going to bend your ear for an hour. Okay, I'll pay you $100 or whatever. Okay. And it
Yeah.
unblocks a lot of stuff, right?
It can totally change things. It's funny how one conversation can send you on a completely different path. It reminded me of you saying that. Recently, one of my goals for this year was to find a mentor, because business is lonely. You don't always know if you're doing the right thing, the wrong thing. There's no blueprint. And I was doing some work for another founder, and I was like, I love working with her. She's amazing to work with. Like, I'm doing things for her. But in there, I was like, maybe, just maybe, she'd be open to being my mentor. Like, I love how she runs her business, and I was inspired by her. And one day I was like, you know what? Worst thing she can say is no. That was my bit of exposure therapy. I was like, do you want to be my mentor? Send. And she came back. She's like, oh, that's absolutely. Like, let's jump on a call. And the first thing she said was, you need to know your numbers. And hearing those words, I immediately was like, I wish I never messaged her, because that's my worst nightmare. I've always, I like to fly a bit blind when it comes to numbers, which I know is not what you should always do in business, but I'm just being honest. And she was like, and funny enough, I've been avoiding redoing my budget too. And I was like, okay, it's nice to see that, we're all in this together. And she goes, let's do a challenge. I'll give you a template. You go do your budget on it. I'll go do mine. And by the time we meet again, let's do this again next month. Let's have them both done and we can discuss. Because she's like, there's no conversation here if you don't know your numbers crystal clear. And I was so scared of this clarity, because I don't know, you make up this story in your head. Is it going to be awful? Am I going to be bleeding in the red for the last, 5 years? I was like, and I don't want to tell her that. And I told myself I'm going to need a full week, full focus, no meetings, clear my schedule. I made up every excuse. And when I actually sat down and did it, I was like almost angry at myself for how easy it was. Especially with AI these days, of just being like, here's all my stuff, let's organize it nicely. I don't have to be an Excel spreadsheet wizard anymore. And I sat back after that and went, wow, that has been on my to-do list for years. And I just pushed it down to the bottom. And it caused me all that stress when I could have just solved it in an hour. But it genuinely took someone holding me accountable, which is not something you get often when you're running a business by yourself. It's very easy to just like shove the parts away that you don't want to do because nobody sees it. But it's really just like shoving things into a closet. It's going to come out and hit you in the head sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it's I'm an admin avoider, so if there's a form that needs to be filled out, especially in Luxembourg, because they're getting better, but a lot of the forms are done in another language, typically either French or German, and it's enough to send me into a blind panic, and I go, yeah, I'm just going to file that for later. And even setting up my business, the reality is it's just basic stuff. You need like a copy of your passport. You need a certificate of where your residence. And when you look at it, you go, that's super simple, but it was just I had to break it down into very small steps. Honestly, it was like paralysis for me. And the same thing about the money and tax filing and everything like that, which is really weird because I like numbers. I really do. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm avoiding it, and I don't know why. It's almost like, again, self-sabotage, like in a weird way. It's just like, but I did something yesterday, and I asked ChatGPT for okay, just for some information. And it was like, and loads of people have different schools of thoughts about AI. But I was like, I told it my problem. I told it what I was concerned about. I told it this and this and this, and it just went away and did all the research for me. Like I didn't have to uh, go through all these websites and understand all this stuff. It did it, and I said, look, I don't want a big long thing that I need to read. Just give me like the highlights, and it
Yeah.
did. And I went away from my computer and did something thinking, oh, like as in scary, it was going to come back with a weird answer. And I actually came back and it was like super simple. And I was like, oh, and it goes, oh, you should maybe go and speak to an accountant. I was like, oh, could you find an accountant for me? And then
Yeah.
it came up with loads of them. I was like, that is so simple, so much easier than I thought. And I was like, okay. And you think, why have I been avoiding that? Then it said, oh, I recommend you start a spreadsheet, do this and this, ask these questions of the accountant. I was like, yeah, but there's other things I want to ask the accountant. And my brain's like, oh, can I include this as an expense, or how does this work? All things that I really do want to ask, but I've been avoiding. And I think sometimes we get pushed up so much. I think what I cause in my own life is I avoid so much that I create this like explosion. It has to be done at that moment. And then when I do, I go, oh, and I feel a bit silly about myself because you go, it's so simple. Why did I need to explode my world to do that? But
Yeah.
I think, having, like you said, a mentor or someone in your life. And I want to just touch on that mentor because I used to work in corporate and they used to have this idea of like mentors and stuff like that. And I think a mentor should be someone that you really align with. And oftentimes people are assigned mentors for you. And I dislike that because it really is quite a personal thing. You're going to be sharing a lot of things. I think if you admire someone who's maybe even just a little bit further ahead of you that can help you, is such a powerful thing. But oftentimes they're forced on you. People said, "Oh, you're not doing well. Excuse me. You should get this mentor," and it feels very invasive. But when you find someone, I've been through therapy, and therapy is the same. You really need to connect with that person. That person that's going to push you enough, and it's just enough, not like this person that's up here just like do this and doesn't listen to who you are. And you need to find that balance. That's my expectation. How in your world for that mentor, is that the same or is that different?
Yeah, and I love that it came about so organically. Like it's tough when when people are reaching out to you and saying, are you looking for a mentor? And you're like, I don't know like anything about you. I don't know if this is going to be a fit. But after working with her for quite some time, I was like, this is like a business that I look up to and that I can see a lot of myself in. And yeah, I guess coming into it naturally like that and having that first conversation, she didn't say like, look at all this growth and doing all these things that would have overwhelmed me. She said, let's look at where you're stuck. And one question figured that out. What are your margins or what are we looking at? And I was like, is this Shark Tank? Because, I'm definitely underprepared for this interview right now. And she was like, all right, let's start super small. She gave me the exact thing I needed to get there, which was a simple template because I worked it up in my head to this big giant task that was going to take me weeks. And she's like, this is the spreadsheet I use. And just seeing somebody at that level using something that I actually understood gave me that little bit of confidence to be like, I can fill that out. And if I can fill that out, and it gives us this clarity to, take our next call and talk about something else, something at one level up, that's how you gain confidence. It's just those little micro actions we've been talking about. And if it really does end up being that small, which we've both figured out is usually the tiniest thing, yeah, it's kind of just easy to get to that next mini level. Not everything has to be a huge jump.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we make those those small gaps this huge giant leap, right? And I think most of the things exist in our heads. One of the things that I've found in my own life is that something very small in my head can become just phenomenally big. But actually speaking the words out loud, like often to someone, you go, oh, well, that's silly. But like some little pea-sized idea that's just been bounding around like a snowball got really massive. But I physically find when I say the words out loud, I go, oh, that's silly. And then that thing that's grown in my head just goes, poof, it's not that big. And it's just about talking to someone about it. And we often feel that people need to, you know, people solve all these problems for us, etc. Most of the time, it's just a conversation that just allows you to get out of your head and just go, poof, and you go, oh, I know what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And you go,
Usually can solve it yourself too. You don't even need them to give you the solution. You talk yourself into it eventually, I find.
really? And that's the thing. I think, there are many one-person businesses out there, but it's having just someone to talk to, and and we're worried that they're going to have to give us all the answers for things and stuff like that. But no, most of the answers are already within, or it's just that person being able to reflect what they see, in a different perspective. And it doesn't mean that they solve all our problems for us, but just having those people in our lives just to be able to share and talk about it. And I remember before, when we had our conversation before this live, you talked about community, and you've started to build a bit of a community from what I remember. Is that right?
Yeah, I think, well, I love, like I said earlier, it's so much easier to share things I find on the internet because it's just, it would be so much harder if like the hundreds of people potentially, watching, or thousands or millions, if they were all in a room, I'd be a lot more nervous. So I feel like I've had a lot of fun sharing my journey online and getting better at making those videos, and people want to follow along. They want to see a success story. People don't generally walk around and like want to tear you down. So it's been, I think, really fun with people who are like, I've been watching you since 2021 and look how far we've come. And it just feels like this group activity. And especially as a solo founder, I lean on people a lot for their feedback. That first product, it sounds hilarious now, but I literally took the prototype that I sewed on my floor, got it mass produced eventually, and was just selling that. Like, no designer touched it, no, like, nothing else happened. It was just like this prototype to market, and I had to rely on feedback from people using it to develop another design. I was like, what's wrong with it? Tell me how you've been using it. Does it fall on the floor and drag in the wheels or not keep you warm? Tell me everything. And I had to lean on them and ultimately came up with that next level of design. And people were like, thank you. But without that, if I didn't ask or they weren't willing to tell, I think I would have just been operating in this vacuum and it would have never improved.
It's I think that's an amazing aspect, because I've spoken to quite a few people who've started their own business, and they come up with the idea of what they think other people want, but it's about that feedback from other people and just being okay. And like you said, most people want a success story, and if they feel involved as well, that's even better, because they feel that they've helped shape that. There was a guy I saw on YouTube Shorts, and he was building this pill bottle. It was basically like a screw that sort of went down, and you could put like 5 days worth of pills in there, and it was just this very satisfying thing. He was an engineer by trade, but he basically built his product along the way with input from people. He just goes, oh, what's your thoughts? I'm struggling with, maybe this is the way it closes and stuff like that. And oftentimes we're really scared about putting ourselves out there because we think, oh, we're going to get judged, it's all negative stuff, etc. But you've said it a few times, with people that are asking you questions and, putting your first video out there, we all think it's got to be perfect. And, we do all this comparison stuff. We think it's not going to be safe. We're going to get all this trolling or whatever. But the most progress you make is when you invite people in to share that. And And I think in our nervous system, we often think, oh, there's danger by putting ourselves out there. But the reality is, you're never going to get feedback unless you do. And I even think about this in my own life because I'm thinking about starting helping people be confident on camera. Um, and this idea is percolating in my mind, but I'm really, again, I'm going to put excuses in there to sort of say, okay. And I think, oh, okay. But actually, I think, well, I have all these ideas of how it might be, etc. But the reality is, my idea for other people will be different, it's actually something that I would like them to shape. And it's just more, okay, like help me do this. These are the things that I think, are they useful, relevant for you? If not, let's just change it around. And I've never done that before. And you go, oh, okay, that can feel very intimidating. And there's loads of excuses, but just put it out there, put it out into the universe and see what comes back. And that can feel really scary. Like the first time I put a video out there. But the reality is, no one's really watching, and you mentioned about going viral, which often is the thing that we seem to be chasing. Like, is okay, but I don't know what I would do if I went viral. I don't even know what that means. I think it's just like a catchphrase that a lot of people said, yeah, your video needs to go viral or whatever. But no, I don't need that. I just would like to connect with my group of people. And I think I've heard it now a bit more that like sponsors for channels and companies coming in to sort of sponsor and partnership, they're not actually looking for these huge number followings. They're actually looking for small, more niche products and services, and that feels much more safer in my world because I go, okay, there's no pressure to go and try and be something that I'm not, and that sort of aligns with a lot of the theme I feel of this conversation is that you've always been yourself. Okay. You've had to push when moments are scary and you've done things, but it feels like you've done things so much on your own terms. And there was for me this narrative for a longer time. And I don't know if that's what I was consuming, but I think there is this emergence, and maybe it's always been there. We can do things on our terms. We have to be as authentic as possible, because I think when we show up at work and we put on this mask, that doesn't work. You know, even if you are successful, you kind of live like almost like a schizophrenic lifestyle. Whereas I show up as I am. This is my apartment. I have this windmill in the background that my kids got,
Yeah, I like it.
and and I just think that works. And I thought, if I make money out of this, would I have a fancy studio? I don't know. I don't know. I think being authentic, especially in the world of AI and everything that can be faked, etc., is it okay? For now, it's working, but maybe I'll make that decision in the future.
Yeah, and when I was doing actually my latest conference, I was using the phrase in all my videos. I was saying, this is the scrappiest I'm ever going to be. This is my first show where I have no idea what I'm going to walk into. And like, that's an exciting feeling. Like, you just really never know.
Yeah, yeah. I think so. Someone was saying to me the other day, I can't remember who it was, that you look at people and they think they've got it all worked out, and you look at all these businesses and they haven't. They're just sort of going from sort of day to day. It's not this clean behind the scenes, absolutely everything's perfect. And the reality is, like sometimes I felt underprepared for these lives, but I just leaned on myself and I go, can I hold a conversation? Yes. Are you curious? Yes. Okay, then you're ready.
It'd be
Like,
fine.
you don't need more of these things. I love the fact that you come and you sort of said in a conference and you were scrappy, because something changed in my mind a while ago. I did this training and this lady turned up and she said, we can talk about anything that you want to talk about. Oftentimes people come with all these slides and everything, and they're not gauging what the audience wants.
Yeah.
And you just turn up and go, look, I'm well prepared for, like, I can talk about 30 different things. What's important for you guys to get from me?
And it's funny you say that because when you were saying, like, you want to do these things and help these people, the reason anybody starts an actual business rather than just like keeping their one skill or item to themselves is to help people and solve their problems and make an impact. Like, that's really the root of what we're doing. Like, I'm not selling a blanket to get money and then just like that's the end. I'm selling them a blanket to exchange for them to be comfortable and warm and feel good. Like, it's, I need to know what their problem is. I can't assume that they're having this problem. And at the time, I didn't assume. I actually was the opposite. I was like, I'm the only one on this planet who's cold while I work. Everybody else has figured it out. Like, you really, your brain operates in this vacuum. And unless you put it out there and show people what you're offering and talk about it and release it into this world, no one can accept your offer. It doesn't exist yet. So by anyone holding themselves back or not sharing, you're really just stopping people from actually getting the help that you were able to provide in whatever way, if it's a service or business. So I think just like the compliment thing and not receiving, like, you're not allowing it to be out there. And then really, what's the point? Like, it's like somebody sewing their own clothes and everybody really wants them, but you're like, nope, I only sew it for me. So might as well set it free.
That last bit, you might as well set it free. I think is a perfect way to end this conversation. I'm well aware that we've gone well over the hour. I think I could talk to you all day long. You're such a fascinating but open person, and I love the way that you think about things. I love the way that you're challenging yourself and moving forward, and just you're very insightful but very down to earth. And I think we need more people like you out there sharing their stories, because I think it's, like I said, like these certain sort of stereotypes of people that are actually smashing it, but you're very honest and open about all the things that you've gone through and how you've done it. And I think that's such a refreshing way to think about it and give that perspective to other people. So for me, you're hugely inspiring. So thank you very much for that. Where should people find you? We didn't actually talk about your product too much. We talked about this kind of backstory, etc. Maybe we do a round two. Maybe people are interested to know more. They might just come to you direct. Where should people find you? I'm sure you've got a website. There's no doubt in my mind that you have. But I found you on LinkedIn. Where's the best place for people to find you?
We'll do this the quickest synopsis ever, just because I feel like we've had people on this cliffhanger. Like, what is this lady talking about? But Warmer is the world's first office chair blanket. So simply put, it slides on the back of your office chair, lives on there, comes over your shoulders, so it looks like a blazer while you're on Zoom. And from the back, it looks like a regular throw. So first in the world. If you see any others, they're copycats, which is very flattering. But yeah, you can find me at bewarmer.com. Warmer is kind of spelled like that with an R at the end, so a U instead of an E. On LinkedIn, I'm kind of like you. I just post about like my wins, my fails, more importantly, what I'm up to, new retail launches, the good, the bad, the ugly. So if you want to follow along there. And we're just in staples.ca. So that's super exciting. All my Canadian listeners. That's super, super exciting.
People buy it online anyway. So I'm in Luxembourg. Do you distribute to Europe?
We ship to the UK, Canada, the US, and Australia at the moment. But we are hoping to expand.
Because I was just obviously Canada can be very cold as well, right? So, but the thing is, you think about the cold weather, but it's not often about the cold weather. It's about air conditioning in buildings,
Totally.
because I have worked in corporate for pretty much 24 years, 25 years. And you sit in an office and someone's sitting underneath the air conditioning duct, and they make a complaint to like the maintenance. They go, no, we can't turn it down. It's just frozen. I'm just thinking, how amazing would people find your product in the office? That doesn't need to be in a cold country. That can just be in a warmish country that has air conditioning in their buildings.
And funny enough, we've actually leaned into doing tons of corporate gifting, because we have people reach out all the time who are like, the entire office is complaining about the cold and we're not willing, like you said, to change the temperature. So we even do custom for companies as well, so they can get their logos, their colors. That's been huge for us these past couple of years.
That is
Matching
genius.
Warmer.
Yeah, because I I'm thinking oftentimes they give out like stress toys and stuff like that. No,
No, we don't need another
give,
water bottle. Please, no more notebooks. Give
yeah,
them something they'll actually use, appreciate, lower your level of complaints. It's just a win-win, I think, for everyone.
yeah. As I said, we didn't even talk about your product, but now you've shared that. I'm just thinking, what a genius idea that belongs pretty much everywhere. That's fantastic. But for today, Jane, it's been awesome. Like I said, I feel that I could just talk and ask you all these questions. So maybe we do a round two if there's questions from people. But for today, thank you for giving me your time. I really appreciate it. I understand, obviously, it's getting towards the end of your day, but you've been flexible with your time and really open and honest. And I love that about you. So thank you very much.
My pleasure, Colin. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
It's me again. So just a quick ask at the end of this video. So my plan is to grow this channel, to have more conversations, to get more interesting guests, to have live, genuine conversations. Now, if you're a follower of YouTube, all the channels say the same thing, and I'm going to have to do it. If you like it, please subscribe and hit the bell notifications. It's quite easy, but it just gives me some feedback to understand what you like and allows me to bring those conversations to you. So I'd really appreciate it. It's pretty quick, pretty simple to do. If you've got any comments, let me know as well. You know, if there's questions you think I should have asked, I'm open to feedback, constructive, of course. But let me know. And yeah, I really appreciate your support.